All right, how's it going? So, Texas is now suing some of the other states for saying their elections were unconstitutional. Of course, if it's states that are suing other states, it goes straight to the Supreme Court. So we'll get into this. This one's on Breitbart. There's other stations that are covered now too, but I think Breitbart was the first one to kind of break the news either last night or yesterday, maybe. Because I'm filming this on the 9th. It's like 9 at night. But whether this gets up soon, I'm not sure. But we'll get into this. This 17 states support Texas Supreme Court lawsuit alleging Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, Wisconsin elections were unconstitutional. 17 states filed an amicus brief Wednesday supporting the state of Texas's lawsuit. Is that weird? Texas's? Wouldn't it just be an apostrophe? That's kind of a, or is it, whatever. Filed directly to the U.S. Supreme Court, which targets Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin over claims of unconstitutional practices in their respective elections. I think I'll get into it, but I think it kind of states the fact that certain states were handling their kind of votes, especially the mail-in votes, kind of like differently depending on what county they were in. Like they were being more favorable to like mail-in votes that weren't correctly filled out, and say Democratic majority counties, like letting them either calling in the person and letting them filling it out, or like the poll watcher, not the poll watchers, but like the ballot counters were like filling out stuff that they weren't supposed to do, while in like other rural areas, they just like, if it wasn't there, they just like discard the ballot or whatever. The states include Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, and West Virginia. I know with everything going on, I'm kind of thinking about, I myself is getting a little off subject, but I kind of want to, Florida or Texas looks like good states to move to. I would say South Dakota too, with like Kristi Noem, like kind of like resisting all like the crazy lockdown stuff. But I think it gets pretty cold up there, so I'm trying to avoid the cold. But I'm contemplating moving to like Texas or Florida. That's a little off subject, but whatever. States that have joined Texas's, Texas, then apostrophe. Lawsuit filed with the Supreme Court, then just goes over what I said before. If you click on this, it goes to the actual like docket PDF that if you want to, you can take a look at. We got that. 17 states filed a brief in the Supreme Court just now in support of Texas' request that the justices throw out the results of the presidential election in 4 other states that didn't support President Trump. Texas filed the lawsuit on Monday, arguing that the battleground states violated the Electors Clause of the Constitution because they made changes to voting rules and procedures through the courts or through executive actions, but not through the state legislators, as Breitbart News reported. I'm still a little stopped up, so it may sound a little weird. But yeah, saying like, I think specifically in Pennsylvania too, like for them to like legitimize and legalize like mass mail-in voting, they had to vote on it first to make it something that's a legal law that's put through the legislator, to make it where that's a legal way that they can vote. But they didn't do that. They just did it instead of not making it a law. That's the whole thing this year between the mass mail-in voting and kind of all these COVID lockdown things. Like, things are supposed to be voted on through the legislator to made into laws, but like all these like, I guess like governors and stuff and certain individuals are like trying to use like executive orders and like making up all these kind of like rules and regulations, like pushing it through and trying to push it through to the masses and saying, no, it's my order, you have to follow it. I'm like, no, we're not a kingdom. You can't just make like an order and then it's not a law. It has to be like voted on. So that seems to be big. That seems to be like a big like through line this year, is like people in power, which seems to be like mostly Democratic, kind of want to abuse their power. like Gavin Newsom, Andrew Cuomo, Gretchen Whitmer. And then the New Jersey one, I can't remember his name offhand. Like I said, I'm stopped up. So, side note, I'm thinking about making this as an audio podcast too, possibly, but I'll figure that out. Additionally, Texas argues that there were differences in voting rules and procedures in different counties, like I said before, within the states, violating the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. Finally, Texas argues that there were voting irregularities in these states as a result of the above. So I think if we go back to like 2000, 2001 with the Al Gore and Bush thing, like I want to say irregularities and like all votes being counted equally was like a big thing with them. And I believe they said it was in like 3 different counties in the state of Florida there with them. The lawsuit states that certain officials in the defendant states presented the pandemic as the justification for ignoring state laws regarding absentee and mail-in voting, and claims that the states flooded their citizenry with tens of millions of ballot applications and ballots in degradation of statutory controls as to how they are lawfully received, evaluated, and counted. Calling the acts unconstitutional, the suit claims that the actions had the same uniform effect. They made the 2020 election less secure in the defendant states, which is funny too, because they keep, I guess it's like the mainstream media keeps saying it's like the most secure election ever. They keep like repeating like, why do you like? You got to start thinking like the most secure election ever. The most secure. There's been like actual voter fraud. There's been actual people like been found guilty of voter fraud, I guess. Then they're trying to say it's not widespread enough, but there's like widespread irregularities. There's like Antrim County, I think in Michigan had, Dominion Software just somehow, some way flipped 6,000 votes that were supposed to go to Trump, but it went to Biden. They went through and recounted and realized, it was like a software glitch, whether it was like an actual glitch or whether it happened to be programmed that way. That needs to be like looked into and figured out, and there needs to be some kind of like audit of it, which is another thing too, because in Georgia they were having the hand recounts, but they're essentially just recounting what it originally counted the first time, and there was no like signature verification to see if these were like actual legal votes. I think they may have gotten that finally, where they're going to do a signature audit in Georgia, but we'll go more into this. Where am I at? The lawsuit states that certain officials in the defendant states presented the pandemic as justification for ignoring state laws regarding absentee and mail-in voting, and claims that the states flooded their citizenry with tens of millions of ballot applications and ballots in degradation of statutory controls as to how they are lawfully received, evaluated, and counted. Calling the acts unconstitutional, the suit claims that the actions had the same uniform effect. They made the 2020 election less secure in the defendant states. Those changes are inconsistent with relevant state laws and were made by non-legislative entities without any consent by the state legislator. The acts of these officials thus directly violated the Constitution. The lawsuit, filed by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, says the case presents a question of law. Did the defendant states violate the Electors Clause by taking non-legislative actions to change the election rules that would govern the appointment of presidential electors? These non-legislative changes to the defendant states' election laws facilitated the casting and counting of ballots in violation of state law, which in turn violated the Electors Clause of Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution. By these unlawful acts, the defendant states have not only tainted the integrity of their own citizens' votes, but their actions have also debased the votes of citizens in plaintiff states and other states that remained loyal to the Constitution. So it's essentially like, oh yeah, they voted illegally. We can't count these illegal votes. Now, what exactly? Because from what I'm hearing, like, it's the Supreme Court has docketed it, so they're saying they're going to look at it. It didn't say that they're necessarily going to take it up. It's just there's a possibility they may take it up. But what exactly they're going to do with it is another issue too. Maybe it gets into it here. The Supreme Court has ordered the defendant states to respond to the lawsuit by Thursday. Response to the motion for leave to file a bill of complaint and to the motion for a preliminary injunction and temporary restraining order, or alternatively to stay an administrative stay requested due Thursday, December 10 by 3 p.m. The court wrote. The state of Georgia has since fired back at the legal challenge, with a spokesperson for the Office of the Attorney General in Georgia telling Breitbart News that Paxton's argument is constitutionally, legally, and factually wrong about Georgia. On Wednesday, President Trump referred to the Texas case as a big one. He's got his tweets here. No candidate has ever won both Florida and Ohio and lost. I won them both by a lot, Trump added, using the hashtag Supreme Court. So there's that. Yeah, there seems to be a whole issue with how exactly... And they're saying that, like I said before, they're using like the pandemic and stuff. Because I think there were certain state officials maybe saying, oh, you can just say because of the coronavirus you were like indefinitely locked down. And because of that, you don't have to have updated state IDs or any of this stuff to show there, and you can kind of do it without voter ID. Which is funny too, because they had like all these Democrats trying to say, oh, like voter ID laws are like racist. I'm like, how is having a state ID to vote in like federal, state, county elections racist? I have to have an ID since I have a cold. Like, I went and got some Dayquil yesterday. I literally have to have an ID to buy Dayquil. But having it to show that you're a U.S. a U.S. citizen voting for like the president of the United States. Nah, that's racist. But, you know, whatever. I mean, some of these arguments are kind of crazy. But, yeah, that's, that, like I said, I'm going to try to start doing these more. There's a couple of others I was wanting to get into, especially with like other business closures being shut down. Then you got like other like I said, other outlets have like picked it up now. But I think Breitbart was the first to report on it yesterday, possibly, but it said they filed it on Monday. So I'm kind of curious what you think about if anything will come out of it, because there's been like sorry. There's been like all kinds of like lawsuits being thrown around. But people keep saying like, oh, Trump keeps losing all these lawsuits. And I think Trump, like his actual team has proposed, I think it was like 3 actual lawsuits. Like all these other lawsuits are like certain Republican parties, certain GOP, certain individuals. There's either been like, I think there was an issue 2 in Pennsylvania. Hold on. With the poll watchers, because the poll watcher is there to make sure that the votes are counted correctly, you know, so they can see it. But they were trying to have, they're trying to say, you know, 6 foot because of the Rona or whatever. But there's also like some of the Republican poll watchers were like being barred from actually seeing. I think up in Michigan they were putting like poster board up. There's also the thing that came out of Georgia. Maybe I'll do a separate video on it. That came out the other day where they had like just these like random ballots that were like under a table. They told all like the poll watchers to go home, and they pulled out like 4 giant cases that can hold. I think they can hold up to like 6,000 ballots apiece. Like 4 of them, so that was like 24,000. So technically, that would have been enough to like just like all of these. They can't like necessarily prove fraud without an investigation, but we only have but so much time. And the whole Russiagate thing, which turned out to be, false, that took like a course of 3 years. Like investigations take like a long time, even like just to research everything and build up the case. And all this stuff has to be done within a short period of time, from like November 3rd to January 20th. So we have what, 2.5 months, something like that. Try to get all this stuff down, because I guess yesterday was technically the safe harbor day, which from what I hear is just another date. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. Like January 6th is also technically when they're supposed to either vote or count the electors. And there's a whole other thing too. Well, I may make a separate video on it as well. Like YouTube is now trying to say that nope, Joe Biden won, Trump lost, and if you dare say there's any kind of errors or inconsistency or fraud, well, we're just gonna take your video down. Like there's active lawsuits going on, and YouTube's like, nope, you can't, nope, we don't like what you're saying, so nope, you can't do it. So you're like kind of like the media is clearly in the bag for the Democrats, as much as like the fact checker thing. Like I have so many videos I want to do. It's just it's holiday season, so I'm like so busy at work. But the whole thing too, maybe I want to make a separate video on this. Like Candace Owens was like, I think on Facebook, she was like, literally and legally, Joe Biden isn't the president-elect. Then they had the fact checkers come in and like, nope, he is. And like, she took the lawyers after him. They're like, oh yeah, well, yeah, I guess technically, legally and literally he isn't. But, because their fact checkers aren't actual fact checkers. If you look into it, it's a whole game of semantics, where they're nitpicking with the words and they're changing things up so they can say mostly false. When you look at it, it's like, yeah, it is true. It's just a game of semantics and wordplay. Like, I don't know if they've been doing this forever, or it's become just so apparent within the last, 4 to 5 years because of Trump, because he got in there and he wasn't supposed to. Sidetrack. That was a huge sidetrack, but I'm like I said, I'm like working, but I'm like listening to all these like different news things and podcasts and stuff, trying to figure out everything's going on. But yeah, there's this going on. If you'd like to support me in whatever way you can, I got a subscribe star. Like I said, I was like trying to start back up with that. If you want to actually buy a t-shirt, I got a couple of designs here. I thought it'd be funny. I was trying to do it before the election. I put like Democrats for Trump, because there are a lot of Democrats that actually came out in support for Trump, because the Democrats have gone far left. I mean, there's the whole walkaway campaign. I mean, they're not for the working class anymore. Like the Iron Belt or the Iron Wall in Minnesota that's voted Democrat for however many decades, like voice their support for Trump, because I mean, he's for the economy, he's for the working class, the middle class, the blue collar worker, and all that stuff. And it's kind of you have like these kind of coastal liberal elites kind of like looking down and making fun of like, flyover states and middle class, working class, and all that stuff. But yeah, there's that if you want to support that. I got another design. I got an idea. I just haven't like put up yet, but yeah, there's that. I got a little ranty towards the end. But if you're on YouTube, if you like this, give me if you like this, give me a like, comment, subscribe. I'm trying to get over this sickness. If you're on Facebook, you can like and follow. I may possibly start a BitChute. Like I said, I may possibly also make this an audio podcast as well, if I can. I think that was it. All right. Let me know what your thoughts are.